King Charles could do a lot more than he is currently doing. He does just enough to make everyday people look at him and think that he is a fundamentally good guy. But the reality behind Palace Gates tells a completely different story. Many critics are whispering that the king simply is not doing enough to address the ongoing scandals surrounding his own brother. Some believe Charles should put him on a private jet, send him directly to the United States, and force him to testify under oath. But why is the king keeping his brother at a safe distance rather than enforcing true accountability? According to royal experts, Charles is absolutely terrified of what Andrew might say if he is backed into a corner. There is a deep, lingering fear that a single explosive testimony could permanently damage the British royal family to an absolute degree. Many believe Andrew has far further to sink before he is ever officially removed from the line of succession, but the wheels of change are already spinning fiercely. The man who was once known as Prince Andrew has seen his position within royal life collapse dramatically over the past few years. Once a highly familiar, decorated figure at major state occasions, prestigious military ceremonies, and joyous family celebrations, he now lives a completely isolated existence far away from the public spotlight. Yet, the adjustment to this new life has been far from smooth. In fact, some incredible claims suggest that behind the secured gates of his new sanctuary, Andrew continues to carry himself exactly as he did during his peak years as a senior royal, refusing to acknowledge how much he has lost. But how long can someone live in total denial before reality crashes down on them? According to several major British newspapers, severe tensions have recently surfaced between Andrew and the remaining staff tasked with managing his daily life. Reports suggest that palace officials and estate employees are no longer willing to automatically accommodate royal requests that would have once been granted without a single question. For royal watchers, this has quickly become one of the most fascinating aspects of Andrew's post-royal life. The conversation is no longer just about the high-profile titles and roles he lost, but about how he is personally responding to those devastating losses behind closed doors. To understand why this situation continues to generate non-stop headlines, it is essential to recognize just how massive his fall from grace truly was. Andrew was born into one of the most famous, wealthy, and powerful families on the earth. He served bravely in the Royal Navy as a heroic helicopter pilot, carried out official royal duties for decades, and stood proudly alongside senior members of the monarchy during its most historical moments. But a dark question has been running around inner circles for over 15 years. Was Andrew actively protected by the institution he served? The suspicions from the public are growing by the day, with many believing the royal family knew about his behavior for a very long time and actively covered it up. People point back to massive past scandals, like the infamous 2010 incident where Sarah Ferguson was caught attempting to sell access to Andrew while he served as the UK's trade envoy. There was also the shocking High Court trial where £1.3 million was mysteriously discovered in the Yorks' private bank accounts, a massive sum that they could never properly account for to investigators. Royal status was not simply a part of Andrew's identity, it was the absolute core of who he was. Then came a swift, devastating series of developments that transformed his entire universe overnight. By the end of his public removal, his remaining royal privileges and formal military roles had effectively come to a permanent end, marking one of the most dramatic reductions in personal status ever experienced by a modern royal. A man who had spent his entire adult life near the center of sovereign power suddenly found himself exiled to the absolute margins of the institution. But his true nightmare was only just beginning, and it centered around his beloved home. The next major battleground involved Royal Lodge, the grand, 30-room Windsor estate that had served as Andrew's primary residence for more than 2 decades. The luxury property became the focus of intense public discussion and bitter family arguments as questions emerged about his future there. Reports indicated that Andrew was completely reluctant to leave the residence, which he had occupied since 2003 under a long-term lease arrangement extending decades into the future. By several accounts, he fiercely believed he had every legal right to remain on the property, creating a massive headache for the king. As pressure from the palace mounted, stories began emerging about incredibly tense, lengthy negotiations surrounding his daily living arrangements. Royal commentators described a difficult, stubborn standoff with both sides completely refusing to yield an inch. Some reports even claimed that Andrew spent much of the period remaining completely locked inside the estate while the legal storms raged heavily around him. But just when it seemed like a permanent stalemate, a dramatic breakthrough occurred that shocked royal watchers. Discussions behind closed doors began focusing on alternative, significantly smaller properties for the disgraced royal. Multiple media outlets claimed that the palace was actively trying to push him into properties like Frogmore Cottage or Adelaide Cottage. Those reports sparked immediate, heated debates among royal watchers, with many questioning whether such high-profile alternative arrangements would ever be accepted by a man accustomed to ultimate luxury. Regardless of the legal outcome, the intense speculation highlighted a recurring theme that continues to follow Andrew's modern story. Even after losing his career, his reputation, and his public standing, questions remain about how much of his former royal life he is actually prepared to let go of. To his fierce critics, the entire situation seemed completely extraordinary, while his few remaining supporters viewed it as the painful reality of a man trying to adjust to a completely different universe. But the final verdict could not be delayed forever. In early 2026, reports officially indicated that Andrew gave up his long, stubborn association with Royal Lodge and officially packed his bags to leave the property for good. It was the definitive end of an era, representing far more than a simple change of address. It signaled the total collapse of his remaining royal identity. But where exactly did he go next? According to official reports, Andrew's very first stop after leaving the grandeur of Windsor was Wood Farm Cottage, a secluded property located on the sprawling Sandringham estate. The cottage had its own distinct place in royal history, famously serving as the quiet retirement home for his late father, Prince Philip. While it was perfectly suitable as a private residence, it represented a massive, undeniable downscale from the sheer size and luxury of Royal Lodge. For a man highly accustomed to a sprawling, 30-room mansion, the sudden adjustment to a modest cottage was incredibly difficult for observers to ignore. But this was merely a temporary pit stop. Soon after his arrival, reports suggested that Andrew permanently moved into Marsh Farm, a 5-bedroom farmhouse located on the wider Sandringham estate. By normal standards, Marsh Farm remains a highly comfortable, substantial, and beautiful property. Yet, compared to the royal palace he had left behind, it was a visible symbol of total exile. What drew even more shock from the public, however, was how the local staff reacted to his arrival. According to accounts published by several outlets, estate employees were allegedly informed by palace management that they would not be required to work directly with Andrew if they felt uncomfortable doing so. Those reports quickly attracted massive headlines because they suggested an unprecedented, highly unusual labor situation within a royal household. It became clear that Andrew was feeling more isolated, rejected, and completely alone than ever before in his life. Rumors began leaking out to the press about his fragile mental health, with sources claiming he spent his days playing Call of Duty in his quarters and watching golf on television all day long just to pass the empty hours. While many members of the public expressed that they felt absolutely no sympathy for him, the claims generated widespread discussion about the psychological toll of his fall. The situation became even more striking when commentators noted that Andrew still expected the high-end protocol of his past life, despite living in a farmhouse. He was a man trapped between two entirely different worlds, desperately holding onto a ghost. But his problems were about to get physically visible. As the discussions about his new farmhouse life continued to circulate, public attention shifted heavily toward his long-term financial survival. Multiple media accounts claimed that discussions were not just about where he would lay his head, but about who was going to pay for his security and daily resources. The public began to question why King Charles was using his own private wealth to finance his brother's lifestyle, rather than letting him face the financial music alone. Commentators noted that using the king's private funds was likely the only way Charles could maintain any form of control over his loose-cannon brother. Andrew was reportedly deeply concerned about his long-term stability, demanding firm assurances regarding his ongoing resources as the monarchy continued to evolve. He valued the ancient traditions, protocols, and titles that were once central to his identity, reportedly preferring to still be addressed by his formal royal styles within private settings. For many observers, this preference revealed something incredibly deep and tragic about his personal adjustment. Losing a formal role is one thing, but completely redefining who you are to the world is a challenge that Andrew seemed entirely unready to face. But then, a sudden security scare on the estate changed everything. The spring of 2026 brought a series of alarming headlines that further intensified the public interest in Andrew's daily circumstances. One widely reported, shocking incident involved a sudden, intense confrontation on the Sandringham estate while Andrew was quietly walking his dogs. According to official media reports, a man breached the perimeter and was later arrested and charged with several public order offences. The dramatic incident attracted significant global attention because it exposed the severe gaps in Andrew's downscaled personal security arrangements since losing his taxpayer-funded protection. Following the scary confrontation, Andrew appeared in public even less frequently, locking himself away from the world. But his total isolation was suddenly broken in early June when shocking photographs emerged across newspapers and social media. The images showed Andrew driving his vehicle with a massive, highly noticeable deep purple bruise covering the entire side of his face. The images instantly sparked wild speculation, with millions of people demanding to know what had truly happened to the disgraced royal behind closed doors. Palace insiders quickly moved to calm the storm, releasing off-the-record briefings suggesting that the massive facial mark was merely connected to a non-serious medical condition rather than an attack or an accident. Some medical experts even speculated that the severe bruising could be related to blood-thinning medication, which can cause massive discoloration from even the minor knocks or falls. Yet, the lack of detailed official information allowed rumors to spread like wildfire across the internet. Throughout all of this, the deep controversies that transformed his standing continue to loom heavily over every single new development in his life. Commentators frequently point out that any discussion about Andrew's future is completely inseparable from the events that brought intense scrutiny upon him in the first place. He now faces a level of personal vulnerability he has never experienced in his entire life, completely stripped of the protections once guaranteed by his royal status. Prince Andrew has consistently and firmly denied all allegations of wrongdoing made against him, previously reaching a massive civil settlement without any admission of liability. But despite his legal innocence, his royal chapter appears to be completely, permanently over. Will he accept his quiet exile at Marsh Farm, or is there one final, explosive twist waiting to unfold in this royal tragedy?